All right, let me break it down for you real quick. Unless you've been literally living under a rock the last few weeks, you've likely at least heard the rumblings of the RPM Act. Heck, I would even go so far as to say that even if you are living under a rock, you've still probably at least seen one wall post or Instagram story about it.
No way.
It seems everyone in the industry is lighting up discussing the who's who when it comes to this new piece of legislation, but getting down to the truth of the matter can be a bit dirty. But what exactly is the RPM Act? What does it stand for, both figuratively and literally? Who does it impact? Where would you even go to start reading about it? Well, buckle up, princess, it's about to get rowdy. I'm Dustin with Custom Offsets. You can find me at dusty.co on Instagram. Today we've got a video that you guys have been asking us for time and time again. Today we're strapping on our powdered wigs, stepping into the old Congress building and finding out just what's the hype with the RPM Act. Before we get into the nitty-gritty of the RPM Act, I am required to tell you that if you need wheels, tires, a lift kit, bumpers, lighting, or even a tonneau cover for your truck, we have all of that at customoffsets.com. In order to truly understand the RPM Act, we have to take it back a few steps. Before we can even begin to dive into this pool of information, we have to dip our little tippy toes in the shallow end. Let me set the stage for you. Our story today begins in 1962 in the small town of Springdale, Pennsylvania, where a woman by the name of Rachel Carson resided. Resided?
Nope.
Reside?
No!
Resound?
No!
No! Where she lived. Check. Carson was a famed author and scriptwriter who spent her time focusing on natural history and biology. While she wrote several books, scripts, and even news articles in her lifetime, the one that matters most to us today is her 1962 book, Silent Spring, which challenged the current time practices of agricultural use pesticides. Carson was concerned about the chemicals that farmers all over the world were using and their effect on both water and air pollution all over the globe.
Chemicals are the sinister and little recognized partners of radiation in changing the very nature of the world.
This kickstarted a whole host of environmental awareness, and over the next few years would make environmental consciousness a hot topic all across the good old US of A. So much so, in fact, that in 1970, the one and only President Richard Nixon presented to the House and Senate a 37-point message on environmental consciousness. Included in this multi-point plan was the forming of a council to oversee the government's responses to environmental problems. Thus, the Environmental Protection Agency, or EPA, was born. By December of 1970, the EPA's first chairman was actually sworn into office. Along with the founding of the EPA was a newly assigned responsibility of what we know as the Clean Air Act. It's important to note here that the Clean Air Act was actually introduced in 1963, which was 7 years before the EPA was founded. It wasn't until the founding of the EPA in 1970, however, that the Clean Air Act was really put into effect. So what is the Clean Air Act? Glad you asked. The Clean Air Act is a law set forth by the US government, that defines the EPA's responsibilities for protecting and improving the nation's air quality and stratospheric ozone layer. Whew. While there's a lot of mumbo jumbo in there, it all boils down to this. The Clean Air Act was put into place to reduce the impacts of air pollution on both the environment as well as human health. It requires the US Environmental Protection Agency to essentially keep tabs on emissions in the atmosphere, some of which can be extremely toxic to public health. Are you still with me? This is where it gets spicy, like ketchup spicy, not like mayonnaise spicy. But before we do that, please consider subscribing to the channel. There's like 62% of you that watch this video that aren't subscribed yet, and it really would mean a lot to us. So if this act has been around since my parents were kids, why the sudden resurgence now? Over the last few years, there have been several cases of the EPA cracking down when it comes to vehicle emissions. This should come to no surprise to you guys, but things like diesel particulate filters and diesel exhaust fluid, or DEF, are now a commonplace conversation in an effort to further reduce vehicle emissions and ultimately have cleaner breathing air. But for every new rule that comes out, there's always one or two rule breakers out there that just gotta stick it to the man. As diesel emissions get stricter, manufacturers began producing ways around these emissions devices. Things like DPF deletes, EGR deletes, and engine tunes became a much more common item in the truck scene. These tunes and deletes often remove the factory emissions devices or circumvent them altogether. These tunes, deletes, and other modifications were previously sold for off-road use only and were legally required to not be used on the street. In 2015, the EPA revisited the Clean Air Act, as they do every couple years, as well as redefined the actual act itself. According to the Specialty Equipment Market Association, better known as SEMA, the EPA is now enforcing the Clean Air Act by designating that street vehicles, including cars, trucks, and motorcycles, are not legal to be converted into racing-specific vehicles. With this, the EPA has effectively threatened the entirety of the performance aftermarket industry. Thus, the RPM Act was born. The Recognizing the Protection of Motorsports Act, or conveniently enough, the RPM Act for short, is a piece of legislation spearheaded by the one and only SEMA. This act exists to protect the rights of Americans to convert their street vehicles, be those cars, trucks, or motorcycles, into dedicated race-only vehicles. It also protects the motorsports parts industry's ability to sell products that enable racers to compete. The bill further clarifies that it is legal to produce, market, and install racing-specific products for race use only. While it does outline a lot of what the EPA cannot tell you what not to do, it does clearly state that the EPA does still have the authority to enforce against individuals who illegally install race-only parts on vehicles driven on public roads. And it even goes further to state that tampering with emission systems of a motor vehicle on a public road is a clear violation of the Clean Air Act. So with all that being said, what is the hype with the RPM Act? And more importantly, what can you do? The RPM Act stands to protect the rights of racers, hot rodders, and automotive enthusiasts alike. It's spearheaded by the Specialty Equipment Manufacturers Association and has been getting a ton of attention in the media lately. In terms of what you can do, the best possible thing to do in a situation like this is to educate yourself. Check out the RPM Act, which had previously been introduced in December of 2019, but was in a deadlock until recently. It's already passed the House committee, but still needs to make its way through both the House and the Senate before it can go for final approval. Talk about it. Sign a petition. Get people to sign the petition with you, and let's get some traction and some movement around this act. If you're not quite old enough to vote yet, then use your voice to help others who can vote and help get them to support this. What do you guys think about this whole EPA RPM Act debacle? Is the EPA out of their minds? Let us know down in the comments section below. And of course, if you're looking for parts for your truck, like wheels, tires, a lift kit, bumpers, lighting, performance parts, we have it all. You can check it out, customoffsets.com. Peace.